Hello and welcome back to another episode.
Hello.
So today we'll be reviewing the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre film released via Netflix, which we've just watched.
We have.
And the best way I would describe it is Leatherface versus the gentrifiers.
Yeah.
So this one's probably going to be a bit of a quick one today. If we're being honest, we weren't, and let's just spoilers start now. And if we're being honest, we weren't really fans of the film.
Not at all.
The best way I think it could be described is how I think a lot of people sort of thought the film was going to go. It's just another film, another directionless film in a franchise that is already probably a bit of a mess in terms of its timelines and remakes and sequels and prequels. It just probably ultimately doesn't add anything story-wise. The kills were good.
Yeah, the kills were very good. I feel like, Halloween kind of lost it a bit with some of their sequels within the franchise, but I personally think that they brought it back quite well in the latest few installments, but this one did not do it for me at all.
Yeah, fully agreed there, and I mean we'll get into a bit more why later on in certain what happens with certain characters, but something just off the bat that I think a lot of people were concerned with was, in the Halloween 2018 new trilogy, and they did the recall obviously, it kind of makes sense how Laurie's still involved with Michael, but a lot of people had concerns about this one, saying it's been 50 years and Sally hasn't done anything, when it's kind of like, well, you know where his house is, he's a Leatherface freak, there's a family, how hard can they be to find? And and in the trailer and in the film too, she says it's been 50 years, which she does say, but that concerns right there. They say in the film that because he was wearing the Leatherface mask, she doesn't know what he looks like, even though it's kind of given that he does kind of wear it full time, and like the family's around, and that, and she should be able to remember the house because it's not far from where her grandfather was buried, and where her family, that they go past Slaught's house in the first film, where Franklin says that's where their family. I can't remember if they worked there or owned it, but they had relevance to it. So, like, if she's been looking for that house for him for 35 years, like, you're eventually going to find him if you have a small land area. And also, secondly, the person that they cast to play Leatherface is clearly not old, because we see him without we see him without his mask, and he's definitely not the age he should be. 50, he's not even 50, and we're thinking
He looks younger than Sally.
Way younger.
And obviously he's supposed to look older. The reason that we're likening it to Halloween is that I feel like there were elements within the film that they were trying to follow reasonably the same pattern. Trying to bring back the original.
They're jumping on
survivor.
Something. Yeah.
But it just didn't. It just fell flat. Laurie made sense. Sally didn't make sense at all. And the way they tried to make. They've made both Laurie and Sally kind of badass, which, they weren't in the original.
Up until they had to prove... up until they had to prove their final kills, because, they did in the way they survived. But...
Yeah, but they weren't, exceptional.
Yeah.
They just were lucky. Sydney. No?
Well, I was thinking, I can't remember the character's name, but the final girl in You're Next.
Yeah.
Yeah, she kicks ass, for sure.
But I just think if Sally wasn't in this requel, it would have made no difference to the story really at all.
Absolutely.
She's not the one that kills him. He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't even die. So,
Michael's not dead either yet. But there's
no, but she had no relevance at all. Laurie has relevance, yeah. And so even if she doesn't kill him, she still is relevant to this new trilogy. Sally, if you took her out, the film could have followed almost exactly the same. Literally without her scenes, it wouldn't really have made any difference. Obviously, without Laurie, the whole film falls apart.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right, so let's get into the bulk of the film. So essentially, the film is about a bunch of teenagers. You have Sarah Yarkin as Melody. So she is she is.
She's described as a San Francisco moneymaker.
Yeah, so
and that basically, yeah.
So she's with her friends, which include Dante, which is played by Jacob Latimore, and so they're Melody and Dante are basically business partners, and they go into the town of Harlow, which is now a ghost town, to basically auction off basically many buildings. It sounds like they've basically bought the entire town, which has become a ghost town. But they've basically
the gas station owner that they stopped and spoke to, like in the very first scene, called them gentrifiers, and that I can't really explain them in a better way.
No, they're looking to go, and they go into this old town. They don't care for its history. They don't care for the people
that live there.
The people that live there. They're just going there to basically take a bunch of young investors from the San Fran area, from the sounds of it, and basically become their new haven. I guess become the new, just their new town. I mean, there's a line that's given where basically in the film someone's asked if they're a cult, and they give the most cult-like answer.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm not going to say...
Like, we're a bunch of idealists who want to make the world a better place or something.
And it's just like, mate, just say no. But accompanying them is, you have Ruth, who is Dante's girlfriend, who is, her name, I've taken her name from the internet because her name's not mentioned once. You get Lila, who is Melody's sister.
And apparently an amateur photographer, which is...
We don't see at all in any of the film, no. It's not even mentioned that they're from San Francisco, actually.
No, I thought they were from Austin because Dante said that that's where he thought the deed to the house was. Yeah,
he says that their office is back in Austin. So something quite key about Lila. Which one? Lila?
Yeah,
no, we'll go with Lila for now. You have to correct us if that's wrong. You have just watched it, and I can't remember her name because it's
that's
just
how unmemorable this film is.
So she was actually one of the more interesting parts of the film. To be fair, she was a school shooting survivor.
Which again, without that part of the plot, wouldn't have really made much difference.
No,
at the end, like, she uses a gun, but there's not really any hesitation actually, because at some point during the film when we knew that she was a school shooting survivor, we assumed that there would be
a moment of
and hesitation of like shooting Leatherface and then like overcoming, and because we couldn't think of any other reason that her being a school shooting survivor would be relevant,
because it didn't come up too much, and we wanted, like, it was quite obvious that they were, well, in the end they didn't, so maybe it was, but it felt obvious that they were building her up to basically, because she's still suffering a bit quite clearly. Yeah. You see her sister Melody almost like mother her a bit at times.
Yeah, it's obviously why her sister's taken her with her, but
because she's a survivor, and she's acting like a bit of a, she clearly sees herself as the victim. I mean, she was a victim, of course, but she
just kind of thinks she shouldn't have survived, really.
Yeah, she's trying to get out of that mentality, so we thought they'd build her up to have that moment that, obviously it's not redeeming. Cause
won't I shoot? But it never came.
It doesn't really come. Like, she has a stand-up moment later.
And she uses the gun, but there's no hesitation really behind it, so without that part of her, it wouldn't have really made much difference.
So there's our four characters.
What they did do well in the trailer is that Ruth doesn't look like she's a part of the main four.
Ruth is the one in the trailer, if you've seen it, and it's a spoiler review at this point anyway. She's the one that clearly dies in the cornfield. Ruth's incredibly irrelevant to...
She dies quite early on, really.
Yeah, she's incredibly irrelevant to the gang. Like, I mean, she's Dante's girlfriend. They never say her name. She's literally...
even after she doesn't come back, Dante's not even massively concerned with her whereabouts.
I guess, to be fair,
Well, it all happens quite quickly.
It does, yeah. And so there are four. They're not the most likeable people.
Not at all.
Especially Melody. I mean, Dante and Melody are quite businessy and quite, I guess, I don't know what the word is.
I just think the principle behind them going to that town makes them instantly unlikable.
Yeah, I guess bloodthirsty in the business sense.
Like, if they were going to support the town with their money, like invest in the town kind of as it is to support the people still living there, But that's not what they want to do at all.
No.
They just want to make it into their own town.
So there are four, and as we get into straight into the film, we have the scene where they're on their way to the town of Harlow, and as Abs mentioned, they go to a garage and just ask that they're on the right path. The garage is clearly selling
Memorabilia, paraphernalia.
Memorabilia from basically the original events. And there's newspapers and stuff about how
nobody knows who he is.
No one knows who he is because then they could never find them again. Well, the film kind of actually takes out the fact that there was a family. There's a whole family. It's more just Leatherface, and no one knew who Leatherface was. And as we mentioned, Sally didn't know who he was because he wore a mask. Like it was a one-time mask, even though we all know.
Yeah, there was a documentary that was released about it that was kind of... They were showing a trailer for in the gas station.
Yeah, and then...
Which is how it starts, how the film starts.
And then they go to leave the gas station and they bumped into Richter, who's probably one of the better characters of the film.
He's my favourite.
He's a town local who...
He turns up in his truck and has a gun on display, which obviously for a Texan isn't that odd.
Yes, so Melody sort of makes us a bit of a scene about it.
Obviously, we find out later that she doesn't like guns because of what happened to her sister. But just her reaction, like, she's like...
She's openly rude to him about it.
Yeah, she's like, oh, you must have a really small penis for having a gun on display.
And even, like, us who are English and, we're not a fan of guns, I wouldn't have a gun. Like, you wouldn't make those comments to someone who had a gun, like...
You don't know why he's got a gun.
And he even says, like, oh, it's because, basically... critters like
he was making a snarky comment about how they get rid of unwanted visitors, hogs.
Wild hogs and stuff, and he says anyway to get rid of them
to them a little bit as well.
But he kind of says it in a snarky but sort of, I don't know if that polite way, but like he's definitely politer than her in this scene.
I don't really blame him for having a comeback because she just judged him.
So they make their way into town. Richter then passes him again in his truck and like releases a load of fumes in their way, so they get annoyed. Until a bit down the road, they then see
they get pulled over by the sheriff. They get pulled off by the
sheriff, and then we meet Sheriff Hathaway and his deputy, who are very irrelevant to this film as well.
Like the gas station guy and Richter have already made comments about clearly no one's happy that they're coming to the town, and then
because they call him, they say you're the cook to Dante.
The sheriff pull him over. So he's obviously opening a restaurant as well as other things, like they talked about an art gallery and...
Yeah, I think, was it Ruth that wanted the art gallery?
Yeah.
More Melody.
It was her partner. No, it was his partner, sorry. So that they were, like, annoyed that the sheriff pulled them over when they were driving responsibly and Richter wasn't. But they clearly just don't want them in the town, which I don't really blame them.
I mean, there is a bit of tension between... everyone they bump into, especially the police.
But they actually seemed quite pleasant. We were a bit worried for a second that it would have been...
They were...
Not an ideal
I would say
situation.
they were pleasant considering how bad, obviously, you'd expect that scene to go.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say they were the nicest cops by far.
Yeah.
But they, they speak to him, they say, look... They kind of give him a warning. Like, basically, the town's got a lot of history. The people who are left... respect that history.
Which seems like literally 5 of them.
And they're sort
Richter, of... the two police officers, the guy that works in the
garage, and 2 people we'll talk about in a bit,
and Sally.
And 2 other
literally
people,
7 people.
So, I think they give them warnings. I don't think the policemen are there to be nice, to be fair.
No.
But...
It just could have been worse.
It's kind of like, what you'd expect. What we kind of expect out of these scenes in films, you'd expect it to go a lot worse, which this is not saying much. But they give them a bit of a warning, but they also say, be good and we'll look after you. And then Melody even says, oh, actually our grandma was from here. And she says, like, I think it's like half of the town motto. To which the sheriff, says the other half back. So yeah, what's interesting about that is... that Melody brings up that their grandma used to live in the area.
Which is never mentioned.
Which is never mentioned again, and I'm only realising that now. Like, it's a really weird thing to bring up, and then it has...
Because it was obviously used to diffuse the situation with the cops. But but then had no
It's never brought up again.
bearing on the rest of the story.
Oh yeah, it's never brought up again. It's very irrelevant.
A lot of the stuff.
Maybe
in
that
this
might
film
explain
are
a bit later why Melody has a bit of a sympathetic reaction to a situation, but not really. So they get into town. It's a ghost town. And then they bump into Richter again, who it turns out that...
He's a contractor that's helping with the renovations.
Yeah, he's basically Dante's contact, and he's renovating buildings for him so they can be sold at auction. But this feels like a really bit... It's a weird situation because you think Dante recognises him immediately, but he doesn't recognise him at the garage. So, but Melody's looking like she has a face of, oh no, he's our contact. Because she's the one in the business with Dante. So she has egg on her face for being rude to him earlier, and he's clearly there.
Not that she really redeems herself with him anyway.
No. So they talk about how they've got a bunch of investors coming, which is what you see in the trailer of the bus full of youngsters.
Which is odd. The main investor I get, I just don't know why all of the rest of the teenagers have been bought.
No, I mean...
Again, that's completely irrelevant.
Something I did want to kind of...
Unless all these young people are just really, really rich.
Yeah, I mean, something I did want to crap on in the trailer was, where are all these kids coming from? Why they're there? Is it a school trip or something? But logically it makes sense, but then it's, because they're all coming to basically bid on these houses and auction them, they're going up for auction. But the thing that logic doesn't make sense, like I've said, unless they're all Silicon Valley millionaire kids, every single one of their dads are and mothers, all their parents are CEOs of all these big tech companies. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know the market prices for ghost towns, but then you think this would happen more often. Maybe it does. I don't know, but it just seems really weird.
Yeah. So then they go into what used to be an old orphanage, because they notice a Confederate flag outside, which obviously they need to take down. So yeah, it just looks like an abandoned orphanage. So they go in there and they try and take the flag down, and then on their way back down, they meet Virginia, who lives in the building, and they have a conversation with her, in which it's clear that the bank has told her that she needed to leave, and she said that she had ironed out the problems and that she still had the deed to the house, where Dante doesn't agree.
This causes a bit of an argument between
Melody and Dante.
Well, Virginia and Dante were first, because I mean, she says I don't have a problem with you people. I brought people like you up in my orphanage. She used the N-word. She does, and obviously that offends Dante, despite her trying to, she's very old. She's like, oh, I don't have a problem with you people, but he obviously takes offence to that.
Yeah, completely.
And it just the situation gets worse. But just to make it clear for a bit of a, what happens later, they don't actually have the deed to this house, so she should still live there. So they're trying to kick her out.
She's very poorly, she's carrying around an oxygen tank
to which
and stuff.
She has a heart attack, as due to Dante going to get the police to kick her out. And I was wondering if they wouldn't kick her out, but no, they fully come in and tell her to get out.
That was surprising.
And she basically starts having a bit of a fit. So then a big man comes downstairs, which is Leatherface, but without his mask, without his skin mask. But
you don't see his face really.
No, there's not a lot of shots.
Because even in pictures around, there's always this boy whose face has got scratchings over it.
Yeah, he's the tall boy in the pictures, the mountain man.
And she said that it's one of her
favourites.
One of her boys that still lives with her.
Yeah.
So obviously...
The only boy, I think.
Yeah, came from... has lived in the orphanage for ages, which, we were like, oh, it's got to be Leatherface, but it makes no sense, because in the original film...
He's at least 20.
He's not...
If not older.
He's not young enough in the original film to then need to go to an orphanage.
And then...
You said his whole family didn't die.
No, only one of his brothers. What is then the timeline of him then, his dad and his his grandfather and his other brother. Like, what's the timeline of him then ended up in that orphanage? Because...
And even if he was young enough in the original film, he still doesn't look old enough. Like, he looks younger than Sally.
No.
And it's been 50 years.
Considering it's been 50 years, it looks like he's aged 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
15 to 20 years from his original age.
Yeah.
You know, because we see a bit of his face, like, in a close-up. Like, because, you know, he's got the long hair over his face. He's got a bit of facial hair. Like, you know, just looks like a big mountain man in a horror film. So he carries her out to basically the sheriff's van, which is also an ambulance. And both the sheriff and the deputy and Ruth, Dante's girlfriend, go to the hospital. Because
Melody wanted to go.
Melody wanted to go, but...
She's very concerned.
Because she's concerned what they've done to her because, you know, and because they don't actually have the deed, it turns out, which you find out a bit later.
Which Melody doesn't know at this point.
No. But so Ruth says, I'll go because, you know, you're the face of this auction along with Dante, her boyfriend. You need to be here for when the investors go. So, I think we should probably wrap this part up because this is where sort of the film takes its turn. Long story short, yeah, that, as we said, the big bloke is obviously Leatherface. I wondered if it wouldn't be, to be fair, at the start when they first showed him.
Yeah, we discover this because on the way to the hospital, Virginia dies. He kills the deputy in the car, and the deputy accidentally shoots the sheriff who's driving, which causes him to crash. And then he takes his mother, adoptive mother, whatever, out of the van, carves her face off and puts it on.
Yeah, so I did have a split second when we saw him in the house, like, is he not Leatherface? Because it'd be a bit too obvious, like, and are we really...
It's quite a short film though, so I suppose they needed to get it.
I know, but just because the logic of him being in an orphanage doesn't make sense, I was like, well, it's not going to be him. This is going to be like a fake out. But no, it is him, as Ab said. He takes his adoptive mother's face off, which is just silly. You know, you'd think he'd take one of the deputies. Ruth, at this point, has like a classic "What are you doing?" moment.
Yeah.
So the car crashes when Leatherface... Actually, a quick word. One of the really good things about this film is the kills.
Oh, yeah.
So the way he kills the police, so he bends deputies.
Yeah. They're very gory.
He bends his arm so that the bone then sticks out.
Yeah.
And he then uses the bone to stab into the deputy's neck.
Yeah.
Then Ab said the gun, he then shoots, kind of inadvertently.
Yeah, oh yeah, not on purpose.
The deputy's gun then inversely shoots the sheriff gun who's in the front seat right through his neck. Excuse me. So then the car crashes into like an old tractor. And like this is where Ruth is really stupid because
she should have pretended to be dead.
She should have pretended to be dead. She does for a bit, but then... So initially she's radioing for help.
And it goes to the gas station. And the person in there doesn't really hear anything until she says he's put on her face. Which he then realises that obviously it's Leatherface back again.
To which then he calls Sally and gives Sally the warning for Sally to come into town. But then the sheriff wakes up from his gunshot wound and makes a lot of noise, which causes Leatherface to come round and basically kill him.
Beat him over the head multiple times.
With the gas canister, to which Ruth here pretends to be dead. So, you know, I was shouting when she was using that radio, what are you doing? Don't be stupid. It's a small town, there's not a lot of cops in the area, no one's going to come and save you, just pretend to be dead. She then gets an opportunity to pretend to be dead, and then immediately after he goes, she then goes to leave on the sheriff's side where Leatherface has just been. And then it's just like, why? And then Leatherface drags her out. She doesn't drag her out.
No, he just drags her back because he's like on the other side of the car at that point and then just stabs her in the stomach basically. But
yeah, he slices her. He stabs her and then slices it through.
Again, a nice kill.
Yeah, I think.
And then puts her hair over her face, which is a bit of an odd moment.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was then going to take her face because he was just sort of looking and playing.
We did also see that he dragged his mother's body away, but we don't see where he poses that body until we see Sally a bit later on.
So yeah, Sally finds, before Sally reaches the town later on, she finds the scene and the mother is propped up, sat up in the middle of the field, cornfield. She's just propped up really. Her face.
Yeah, she's got sunflowers around her.
Yeah, and her face is very
obviously
It's
No
on
face.
show. It's on
Yeah.
show for us to see. Yeah, her head is on show for us to see. She's got no face because we didn't see it when it was carved off.
Yeah, so after Ruth has died, they have a
Dante.
they have a brief encounter with Richter. Richter's kind of had a nicer conversation with Leela at this point, where she tells him that she was involved in a school shooting, and yeah, he just seems like an alright guy.
He has a bit more of an understanding, like, how could you go, it must be horrible to go through that.
Yeah.
He shows her his gun, which you think is a bit insensitive, but like he because she asks if it's loaded, he takes the clip out, he takes then the bullet that'll be lodged in the chamber out, and he sort of says, have you shot them before, and gives it to her to sort of, I don't know, like, almost like, don't be afraid of it, or I don't know, I don't really know, but she is afraid of it. She picks it up and then she just doesn't like it. Melody comes by and sort of like reprimands her for being with him, but
more of a dick to him.
Yeah, she just continues to be a big dick to him. And then this is when the bus of entrepreneurs arrive.
Again, yeah, I'm not massively interested in that part of the film. They kind of talk about what they're going to do, and
so yeah, we're
brief history of the film and how they brief history of the town and how
always so rustic, we love it.
yeah, the investors think that actually they need to keep it almost as it is, like appearance wise. Anyway, and then they have a conversation with Richter about, because
just to jump in, we're introduced to Catherine here, by the way, who's another character who we don't get her name in this film at all.
Yeah.
But basically, she's come off the bus.
She's like the main investor.
But she's clearly worked with Dante, knows Dante, and has organised the group of people to come and bid. I don't know if Catherine intends to do it herself, but they get the barbecue out, they have some beers, the kids, they're having a bit of a party, if anything. But then
and then they find out that Virginia's died.
Because it turns out that Ruth was able to text
Dante.
No, I think it was Melody. I think she texted Melody
just
before,
as, like, kind of almost as the car was crashing.
It was the second before Leatherface killed the deputy.
I don't think Richter knows that she's dead. I think Richter just knows that she went off in the ambulance.
No, he hears that she dies. She ever hear, that's what gets him. Yeah.
So he takes all the keys away from them for both of the cars.
He basically says, look, I overheard the conversation. She seemed to believe that she could live there. You said she couldn't. Until you prove that actually she could live there.
She couldn't live there.
Yeah, she couldn't live there.
You've got the deed.
You've got the deed. You need that to prove that. Otherwise, you've just trespassed and basically killed her. To which Dante goes to find the deed on the bus, and it turns out, which I don't know why the deed was on that bus anyway, because that bus arrived separately. You'd think he have it, but he doesn't have the deed. He says, maybe it's back in the office, which is back in Austin, as we mentioned earlier. And Melody's like, you better have it, otherwise, just don't bring us into this.
So Leela said, well, if she has the original deed, then that's going to be in the house. So they decide to go and have a look.
Melody and Dante go to look for it, and Melody tells Leela to basically sit on the bus and stay for this entire bit. Because
she said, actually, before, like, when she was talking to Richter, she said that she didn't want to live in the town at all.
Yeah, Leela doesn't want to be there.
And Melody's just more of an annoying character with her.
Well, I think she thinks she actually switches quite quick to it, doesn't she? She says, as soon as the thing that happens to Virginia happens, and by that I mean she has to be taken to hospital because she starts having a fit.
Yeah,
she's like, leave. We're cursed, we need to leave, this isn't going to work.
So they go into the house again. Dante searches downstairs and Melody goes upstairs. And Melody finds the deed.
It's not totally clear that actually the deed says Virginia doesn't still owns the house, because like you said, like an original deed doesn't mean anything unless...
Yeah, we were wondering how it would work, whether it would say dates on it or if the bank would take it away.
Based on
whatever.
Melody's reaction, it's quite clear that
she still does own it.
Yeah.
As they are obviously in the wrong.
And Dante's messed up there.
And as she's walking around, she realises that on the floorboards that she stands on, they creak, which is relevant for later. And then we see Dante searching around. He goes into the kitchen And I remembered this bit from the trailer because we were hearing funny noises around the house and we were wondering whether Leatherface was going to make an appearance. And we both said it was way too quick. And we thought
he
that
got
we
back
would
from the
have
crash very too quick.
We thought we would have seen some interaction with Sally and these main two before. But anyway...
he's back in the house.
And we see him... I mean, the cinematography is quite good. Like,
this kills... sorry. No,
yeah.
It's not even a kill. This is great.
Yeah, because we see him in the saucepans in the reflection, and then there's a swinging door.
So the door into the kitchen... and that's just a quick word on the orphanage, by the way. The orphanage from the opening inside, as you go into the house, it kind of looks like the original Leatherface house as you go in. You know, the stairs on the right. There's a door immediately at the end of the corridor, I suppose. I mean, to be fair, a lot of houses look like this. To where, basically, where the kitchen goes in would be where the sliding door has that Leatherface had. But obviously, it's not the same house. It's because this orphanage is on a main road in the town. And... So, yeah, it's not the same house because it's on a main street, and yeah. So as I was saying, the kitchen door is swinging from where Leatherface obviously entered it, and we see as the door swings open, we see Leatherface take a swipe at Dante, sort of around around his facial area, and we see the blood, and it swings closed, and then as it swings open again, we see Dante come out and he collapses to the floor,
like he's choking on blood.
Yeah, because he's sort of like lying down in a puddle of blood. And that's when Melody sort of makes her way downstairs and she sees her face over Dante's body, which then basically occurs a bit of a hide chase scene. So Melody goes upstairs and hides in a wardrobe.
Leatherface comes up, goes in the wardrobe, takes out one of his mum's dresses, smells it.
And then he starts hammering on one of the walls.
Oh, it's obviously because he's trying to find his...
And he finds his chainsaw in the old wall, and he gets his chainsaw. I'm not sure what he's doing with hiding his chainsaw in a orphanage house. But while that was going on,
Dante kind of recovers, and tries to go for help. And at this point, everybody from the bus is back on the bus having the party because it's raining. And
it goes from day to night. To them complaining about the heat. I mean, maybe it's just Texas, I don't know, I'm from England, but it goes from like day, boiling sun, to night, pouring rain in like a second.
Richter comes out and...
With Catherine, sorry. Separately, like, you know, they're separate.
From different directions, and Richter is, you know, still kind of annoyed about the whole deed situation, so he's trying to talk to him. And then when he realises that he's injured, he's, you know, he really tries to help him.
Yeah.
And Dante dies then and there.
Oh no, but we then see the extent of his injury.
Yeah, like his whole half of his face.
Half his, like, where his sort of cheek from down ear to basically his mouth, and you can like it's basically
like
gone.
It's jokery.
Yeah, and you can see his teeth.
Yeah.
Like you can see his teeth, like, so that's why he was like kind of choking.
I don't really know how he survived that. There's a couple of times in this film where people survive injuries that don't look very realistic. But so he dies. So Richter takes his gun to go and investigate. But we were wondering at this point whether he was going to be like related to Leatherface or something, because he didn't really seem to have.
He wasn't shocked
reaction.
But you know, and there's always normally, not always, okay, but mostly in these Texas films, Leatherface has family. So I wondered, is he going to be the twist? Like, anyway, but he goes into the house, and he basically encounters...
And at this point, actually, Melody is moved to under the bed, and she can hear somebody else coming in, and that Leatherface hides, I think, waiting for him to come in. So she moves the mirror so that Richter can see the reflection of Leatherface.
So they get into a bit of a scrap. Guns are knocked out of each other's hands, and so's the chainsaw. And they have a bit of a scrap, and Richter pins Leatherface against the window of the house, which has bars. Like, all these orphanage windows have bars, like we see like a few times when like Melody and Leela go to like for help to shout out the bars, but they're in bars, so he pushes them against the bars, and then Leatherface notices, you know, a shard of glass against the window pane where the glass is broken, so he pushes Richter into the side of it, cutting some of his neck, which then sort of sort of takes Richter out for the count, I guess, as he stumbles to the floor.
Yeah, and he immediately, he's like literally lying on the floor opposite Melody, but Leatherface can't see Melody at the moment. But Richter obviously still has the keys, so he takes them off his jeans so that she can get them easily. So clearly not a bad guy.
His death.
And then his death was pretty brutal. Repeatedly.
He gets, I think, hammered. He gets hammered, like his face in, and you do see, like, basically, his face is hammered to smush, like.
Yeah.
And we see it happening. Like the first, like, I think it's the first or second initial blow. You see it's dented, and you think, oof. And then they do a few more, and the camera goes back to Melody a few times, but then it goes back to the face, and by the end of it, which we do see it afterwards, yeah, it's his face is gone. It's mush.
And then Leatherface leaves the room,
which was shocking, by the way. I didn't think he would either die, or he would die late.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very short film, so he dies over the halfway point, maybe at least halfway point, if not later. But yeah, I don't know. I thought he'd have a bigger role to play.
And then Leatherface leaves the room, and I think at one point maybe we thought he'd left the house, but so Melody takes this opportunity to leave, and she does something really stupid because she doesn't want to stand on the floorboard, so she climbs over the banister, which makes more noise. And when she turns around on the stairs, Leatherface is at the top of the stairs and throws his chainsaw at her, so she falls all the way down the stairs, like in one kind of fall, and falls like through the floorboards into the foundations of the house, I think.
Yeah, this was something that really annoyed me. Like, Ruth had this moment earlier of a stupid moment, and I said to Abs, when Melody first sees that she's on her way downstairs and sees Dante's body on the floor and Leatherface like on top of it, like hovering over his body, just before she goes back and hides, I said, if I was her, I would just sprint down the stairs past Leatherface, or not past him, but suppose you're past him when you go downstairs, out the door into the bus, because there's people there, there's tons of people there. I mean, we learn later he doesn't really give a shit, but rather than go back on the stairs, I mean, but then secondly, this bit now when she's trying to escape, I mean, when she knows he's still upstairs in the bedroom, you're ahead of him, and she decides to go down a banister to be quieter. Just sprint down the stairs. Who gives a shit if he can hear you? Like, you're going to people. Like, you could easily jump on the bus. Yeah, so she falls through the foundation, as Ab said, and basically there's a bit of a, I guess you call it like a sort of chase scene with a chainsaw. Leatherface puts his chainsaw in the wood and basically sort of drives it towards her as she sort of goes back and back and back. And there's a lot of space for her to basically go left or right. If she rolls to the left, rolls to the right, then the chainsaw, which is going straight down in a straight line, evades her. But it comes to the point where the Leatherface is stopped by a pipe, and the chainsaw hits the pipe, and then a lot of poo ends up on Melody's face. So then Lila
has left the bus,
she's
trying
left
to
the
find
bus.
Melody, and then they're shouting for each other.
And she manages to drag her out for a grate. So they run back to the bus together and they get on the bus. And then they tell the driver to drive off. Now this is another point where the characters, get a bit more stupid. Catherine, who's, she has seen
Dante.
She's seen Dante die, see what something's happened to him. When she gets on the bus, she's very funny with the bus driver about opening and shut the door, like make sure it's closed at all times unless they need it. But she doesn't tell the bus driver a thing. She doesn't tell any of the people. I mean, there's a lot of people partying on what looks like an upstairs part of the bus, all the entrepreneurs, but she doesn't tell the bus driver a thing. It's really stupid. So then the girl's back on the bus and they're like, drive away now, and they obviously have urgency, and he doesn't have urgency because why would he? And they just don't tell him, and he doesn't really ask either, but it's a bit weird. To the point where we see Leatherface with the chainsaw waiting, and all of a sudden the bus stops. So I think it's implied that he
slashes a tyre or something else.
But it's not, we don't really hear anything like that. It's not like, we don't hear like a weird noise or a so the bus driver's like, oh, what's that? Gets out of the bus, and they tell him not to go out, but it's not like a...
Don't go out, there's a psycho killer there, it's a...
Yeah, and the bus driver's just ignoring them because he's like, And he has every reason to ignore them because they're not giving him a reason. Like, you know, sometimes like in some films they'll be like, oh, don't do it. And he's like, well, you're really like, what's wrong with you? Why? Like, he just looks at him like, you know. So he dies and his decapitated head somehow gets chucked back inside the bus despite...
They don't shut the door or try to leave. They just walk in further into the bus as Leatherface comes on to the bus.
So Leatherface comes into the bus, and this is
this was like the shittest part of the trailer. They all get their phones out and it's like, don't do anything, you're going to get cancelled. Which just makes that generation look like a bunch of morons.
It's a really
Sorry.
It's a really stupid scene.
It really annoys me.
It's a really stupid scene because, I mean, there's a lot of good kills on here. I mean,
most of the kills are good.
Everyone in the bus dies except for the main two girls. The main two girls left.
It's a proper bloodbath.
But it's really stupid because the amount of people that's on the bus and they go to the back and start go to the emergency exit door and they can't get out of it for some reason. It's not really said why. They just can't.
And a lot of the Catherine nearly gets out because she realises that she can open a window. But if she'd done that 2 minutes earlier,
I said to Abs
there were so many of them that you also said they could have tried to run past him or whatever.
Yeah, there's about 20 people in this bus and he's killing them one by one with a chainsaw. You're telling me you wouldn't hop over the seats to the sides while he's killing someone? Catherine goes out the window when there's she's probably the last person alive, besides the two girls, and
he cuts her in half.
He cuts her in half. And she's like that. It's like, mate, if you did that straight away, you'd be home free.
There's a moment where Leela's on the floor and she's seeing somebody else get killed, and it takes her back to the school shooting, and then Melody picks her up and they go into the bathroom. And then they spend ages in there and see lots of blood coming in, and then they realise that there's a window up at the top. So then they try to escape through there, but make loads of noise, and then...
They also wait until, he's done killing everyone, so he's like, oh, okay, I'll now go for you. Instead of doing it first thing, not first thing.
Look around, see what's in there.
Yeah, but if they even see the window and they pause for a bit and they wait, and it's like, oh, he's killed everyone now, let's make a run for it. Now he's free.
So then, because he hears them and stuff, he... cuts through the door, and then Melody had bought a cork screw opener from the gas station, which had a chainsaw in it. So she stabs him with that, and then they escape out through the roof, and then run away. And then as they're running away, Sally pulls up in the car, so they get in, and then she locks them in and says that she's been waiting 50 years for this night, and because he wants them, she's gonna bait them.
Yeah, she's gonna use them as bait because they're like, please.
Even though she leaves them in the car and goes to find him. So
yeah, because
they're
like, she's like, please. They're like, please get us out of here. Let's just drive. And she's like, no. Because it's kind of like a police, it's like a police car set up. There's a grate between.
It wasn't really until that point that they realised that he was Leatherface either.
No, yeah.
As in the girls.
Yeah, because at the garage there's obviously there was a load of newspaper articles and stuff about.
Yeah, I think Leela realised kind of.
Yeah. So they're kind of locked. Think of a back of the police car with the grate, and the doors are locked. They can't really do anything. They can't climb to the front. Sally goes out with her gun.
You were hoping she would die quite soon.
I was hoping she'd die instantly. I was just like, have a because obviously it was built up to be they were trying to do a Halloween. I just thought, have a redeeming moment.
Yeah, she was much more. She appeared like she was going to be much more relevant in the trailer. Pretty much all of her scenes in the trailer are all of her scenes.
And I was just thinking of have a fake out, just cut her head off straight away.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. So
they have a bit of a struggle, and then she can't shoot him because his hand's on the butt of the gun or something, and then he puts the chainsaw through her.
Well, she does. There is a bit. Yeah, because there is a bit of back and forth, and she.
Oh yeah, because they go into the house, don't they?
Yeah, they go. She goes into the house,
and she's annoyed that he doesn't remember her.
Yeah, because she goes upstairs and she names everyone from, the first film, all her friends that she killed, like Kirk, and then she names Franklin. She's like, please say you remember me, and he basically gets out and walks past her. He walks past her. Leaves the house, goes back to the car where the girls are, smashes the window to try to take Melody out, and then Sally comes out of the house slowly and laughing. It's oh, finally, you're gonna do anything. So she shoots him.
I literally forgot that's how much.
Yeah, she shoots him. So he then runs around the corner like nothing's happened. She then gives the keys to the girls and says, "Right, go and get out of here." Even though she just said she needs them as bait. Literally,
it's a bit of a
literally
fake out,
about
the way he
a
is.
minute ago, she was like, "Oh yeah." So the girls are in the get into the front of the car, and right before they leave, Sally walks up the high street, and she can hear a chainsaw revving, and she looks right where down this sort of alleyway where there's a lot of like bin bags, and he basically comes charging at her. So which basically what we said earlier happens. She tries to shoot him, but she doesn't really get a good shot off. They get a bit close. I think she even stabs him with a knife.
Yeah.
And then like, she's got the gun to his face, trying to shoot him, but he's got a hold of her, but she can't shoot him. So yeah, he then just sticks that chainsaw right in her gut.
And like drags it
lifts her high in the air.
Bit like Dewey.
Yeah. And throws her towards the bin bags from the middle of the high street, so she gets some airtime. So the girls decide, right, we got to run him over. So they drive at him, and it's so stupid. Like,
because obviously he's got his chainsaw, so
he chucks his chainsaw at the car. I guess the engine part of the chainsaw, that part hits the window and smashes.
I thought that was going to kill someone actually.
It smashes the window, and he kind of like, he jumps out the way, and they sort of clip him without damaging him, and he just runs off into. And they crash basically. It leads them to crash into Richter's shop, where they smash into a shelf, and it means like a metal pole lands, and on Melody's leg, and she's kind of stuck there. Melody convinces Leah to go, and that she needs to go and run, and that she's going to die there, which basically Leah goes.
But she, as Leatherface is coming in, and then she goes all the way round and picks up Richter's gun and tries to shoot him, even though she knows that there's nothing in there because she saw Richter take everything out.
Yeah, it's a bit stupid. So he takes so she causes the distraction away from Melody, and Leatherface chases her out back into the high street, and when he gets close to killing her again, he gets shot with a shotgun from Sally, who's lying by the bin.
We don't understand how she's not dead.
The garbage bags, and it's really stupid for me because one, look, she's clearly not moved because she's dying, but also she has her shotgun gun, which would have been dropped in the middle of the high street, and then she got flung away from the gun. So she somehow either miraculously picked up the gun, crawled over to the gun, picked up, and then crawled back to lie in the. Yeah, it's stupid. So she shoots Leatherface, gets a shot off again. He runs into and hides into the cinema, and then Sally calls. She goes to see her sister. Leela goes to see her sister, but then Sally says, "No, come here first," and basically tells her not to run because that's what she did, and he haunted her for the rest of her life. So she needs to do something now, and that
a bit like Laurie, really.
And she dies. Sally dies. And like Ab said, you could take Sally out of this film. It's not even the original actress anyway, and she would not add a single thing to this
They're just trying to buy into the requel.
Yeah, they're trying to jump onto what was hot from 2018, Halloween 2018, but
and obviously then done with Scream and other ones as well.
I mean, probably a bit too soon to say Scream because obviously this.
No, but it just seems to be the way original horror films are going at the moment.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they did a lot of remakes, so, sort of.
They just seem different to the remakes back then, though.
The problem is that the logic in this film didn't make sense. Sally's been waiting 50 years to basically, it makes sense.
And he literally was down the road.
Yeah, he was down the road.
Like, out of the people that were left, it was like the obvious person.
Yeah, so my first issue in the fact that, obviously, as I said earlier, if you're looking for 30 years, take it even 2 years, she would have a certain square meter radius because she would know, hey, it was where my granddad was buried, it was near where the slaughterhouse, you'd find it within 2 years, let alone 40, 50, however long it's been, And secondly, as I've said, hey, even if you didn't exactly know who it is, there's only 5 people left in that town. It's the hulking giant weird bloke. Shocking.
Who never leaves the house.
I mean, yeah.
Obsessed with his mum.
Who could have seen it? Come in. It's just they try so hard to. But the thing about Laurie and Michael is it made sense. he was in a mental institute. Like he then has finally escaped.
And wasn't even looking for her.
He was brought
to her by
a doctor, weird
Loomis,
doctor,
which obviously wasn't
the weird doctor bloke. Exactly, yeah. Like he doesn't go back looking for Laurie that night. Even in the second one, if you haven't seen it, spoilers, he's actually just going to his bedroom.
Yeah, he just wants to go home.
Or his sister.
It's not even about Laurie.
Or his sister's bedroom. Sorry, it's his sister's bedroom. But like, yeah, they're trying to do that. And it just doesn't work. So. That's where I give up at the film at this point. I kind of want it to end.
Surprised you gave up that late.
You know, I was even saying I hope Leatherface wins. I hope he just kills these two girls. But no, they go into... We'll just wrap it up. They go into the cinema. Sorry, Leela goes into the cinema.
With the gun.
With a gun. Looking for Leatherface. She hears the chainsaw. She finds it.
It's on its own.
It's on its own. She's like, shit. Leatherface comes out and basically pushes her into... Because the cinemas at this point, the theatre is old and there's basically a hole in the floor and there's basically water. So it's kind of like a little pond almost. And he pushes her in there with him and he goes under and he's pushing her head down to drown her. And they both disappear in the water and then about 10 seconds later she pops up like, breathing so low. And it's kind of like, this like 6'5" man was just drowning you. And all of a sudden like you've hurt him and we haven't seen how. And you like where has he gone? And then he shockingly jumps out and tries to drag her back in. But that's when Melody turns up and she shoots him. And then there's another scuffle. It's Leatherface sort of, attacks Melody. And then...
We were half expecting the gas station guy to jump out at some point.
But essentially, as he's about to kill Melody with the chainsaw, he's obviously left... Layla like down on the ground with the shotgun. She shoots him twice,
and then there isn't like any bullets left or whatever.
But he's tilted on the end of that pond thing, so you think, and then he kind of recovers. And it's like, you haven't got any bullets left. But then Melody sort of steps in front of her sister out of nowhere
with the chainsaw
and just takes a slice up. Sort of to his chin, like top of his chest, chin upwards. And he falls back into the sort of little water hole, and they do a close up on his face, on his eyes, and he sort of sinks in. And that's it. Boom! The girls have done it. They've killed him. They've survived.
I thought it was pretty easy for him to die, and they just dropped all the weapons like you do.
Yeah.
Then they go to get in the car.
They make a joke about how Leela's changed her mind, or she wants to live here now.
Yeah, they put it on autopilot, and then Leatherface obviously is not dead. Drags Melody out of the window of the car.
No, this is actually a pretty good moment, actually. Maybe because I just wanted them to die, but Leela gets out the sunroof, and because the car's on autopilot, it's still going. So the car's still going, and Leela's going, and Leela watches, and she's like just like smacking her hands on the car roof, like, and he grabs Melody and basically puts her on her knees and basically just takes her head clean off and kills Melody and just decapitates her. And while Leela's just still going and like basically leaves the town while the car's on autopilot. And it ends.
Well, yeah, credits, and then there's a post-credit scene.
Yeah, then there's a post-credit end scene.
Which is like properly after all of the credits.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's wise to do that in the Netflix film, because most people just press back up when they're finished on Netflix, and it's not like it's not in the cinema where you're waiting. Basically,
not a Marvel film, guys.
Basically, Leatherface returns to his original house, which doesn't look like his original house. But it's kind of like, if he had the original house the entire time, why is it the orphanage? Why was it the orphanage?
They're obviously setting it up for a sequel, which, by the critic reviews, we're hoping
I wonder.
won't
I hope it bloody doesn't. This franchise needs to die, because it's been a very long time since there's been a good film. That the film is great for
kills.
Kills, and that's it.
Like in summary,
it sounds like I'm being
don't waste an hour and 23 minutes of your life.
It sounds like I'm being too harsh, but like, that is kind of what basically these films have come, like especially the last two films, like where they did Leatherface, the prequel, and obviously they redid the Texas Chainsaw before that with Alex Daddario. Like, they just become, the storylines aren't great, they just... It's just another film to the timeline where you think, oh, the kills are good. It's a gory film. Especially considering actually the original was not that gory. Like, everyone thinks it is, but it wasn't. It's just, it was really scary. But yeah, right, I think I'm pretty much done talking about this film. If you're bored on a Saturday or Sunday and you haven't got anything to do, give it a go. You might tolerate it more than I did. And Abs did. But, oh, and also in the credits, they do, like most films do, they remake, they do like a, not a remake here, they do a remix of the original
soundtrack.
You know, which obviously the song, the music for the film is, the original is great, it's really eerie, and they just give it like a DJ remix, and it's just like 75% not it, and it sucks. Yeah, please, no more.
No.
Okay, please
Thanks for listening.
Please don't make another sequel.
Like and subscribe.